Hi everyone, I'll leave the video link here, which is an excerpt from the last American Vagabond show that he did last night, and he's now published this excerpt which covers the World Bank website, and it's been all over the internet. People are talking about, you know, this is the World Integrated Trade site showing what countries have bought around the world and how many in what year, and we can see that it's 2017 and there's COVID test kits, and it's like COVID-19 test kits in 2017. So in this one there's no record that it's been updated, though they have since the website I've just looked at, they appear to have updated it. They said in April 2020, and it looks like the COVID test kits are now just called medical kits, though I might not have looked on the right page. But anyway, this is the page that was coming up at the time that Ryan and other people were checking on this, because it's not just Ryan that's talking about this. So obviously Ryan explains that what's happened is the particular test kit, is it the PCR kit, they've renamed it on the website COVID-19 test kit, but previously it will have had a medical term like, say, PCR test kit, okay? But then in the computer's algorithm or whatever it is, as soon as they've updated that, changed it to COVID, then it's changed it throughout the site. So, you know, it goes right back now. These particular test kits are now called COVID-19 test kits. And on the site I looked at, I found this, which was World Customs. You know, there was a link to this from this site. At the bottom it said something about COVID-19 test kits, and I clicked that and I arrived at this. I was sent to this World Customs Organisation classification reference, 2nd edition, and it was updated April 2020, COVID-19 medical supplies. And we can see that this is the COVID-19 test kit, diagnostic reagents based on polymerase chain reaction, PCR, nucleic acid test, and then there's another test, diagnostic reagents based on immunological reactions, and these are the other things needed to do the test, okay? But these are the two tests. So I've gone for this one because this is the most popular one that's being used, okay? So I decided to have a look into this and see what it was all about, what the test, how it works, and I'll leave you this here. Now, this is an article just explaining about these tests and how they were developed, mostly being used to diagnose HIV, okay? But it's saying it's also they can be used for other viral testing, so, you know, pneumonia, streptococcus, sexually transmitted infections, herpes, West Nile virus, gastrointestinal infections. But finally, the host of viral pathogens causing human disease are generally identified, quantitated and managed by a PCR-based laboratory test. Important examples are diagnosis and management of hepatitis B and C, herpes virus family infections, and influenza epidemic outbreaks. And that, I suspect, is what is going on with this. Is that, as we have suspected, personally I've suspected all along, I wrote to the NHS with a Freedom of Information request, which I've never received a reply from them, asking, are they testing specifically for COVID-19, or are they testing for a coronavirus? Because the British government, in their coronavirus bill, an actual criminal act of Parliament, this coronavirus bill, it states that coronavirus means COVID-19, and that is a lie, because it doesn't. Coronavirus applies to a variety of influenza type illnesses right down to the common cold. Okay? That's your coronavirus. It doesn't apply specifically to COVID-19. But if the government says it does, and then it tells hospitals that if you test for coronavirus and they test positive for coronavirus, then you let us know, and you put it down as COVID-19 because that's our directive. That's the law now. That's the new Act of Parliament has stated that coronavirus has to mean COVID-19. Now, do you understand where I'm going with this? Do you understand what actually is happening and what has been happening? That they've been testing people with a test that can tell them if you've got an influenza, if you're carrying an influenza bug, basically, even the common cold. So they've been testing people in the middle of winter, and then after they've kept everybody in and everybody's immunity's lowered because they've all been indoors all the time and scared even to go out, which lowers immunity as well, the stress. People losing the jobs, worrying about how they're going to pay the rent, just all kinds of things. The stress, levels of stress, the fear building up every day on the BBC. It's been a nightmare for a lot of people. People have been literally terrified, lonely and terrified. All has an impact on immunity. It's basically they've dragged the flu season right out with this lockdown. Because obviously as soon as you start letting people out and about again, all these people with weakened immune systems, you know, of course the viral infections are going to take hold. But I believe, you know, and I'm not saying, oh, it's a definite fact, but I think we've got enough evidence here for what amounts to lawful suspicion. And lawful suspicion needs to be acted on, okay? Because, you know, it's lawful suspicion that can get people arrested, put into jail on the remand until they stand trial, and then it all comes out in court, and they either get convicted or walk free. But I think we have enough evidence here to warrant arrests, basically. And so who are we going to arrest? Well, I think we need to arrest everything that is happening and being threatened to happen. We need to arrest the new normal, okay? The new normal that they wish to impose. Because we do need a new normal on this planet. Yes, certainly we do. A new normal where, you know, law and order operates, that we respect human rights, that we respect our planet, that, you know, we don't contribute anymore to the destruction of our planet, that we hold criminal corporations to account for their destruction of our planet. We hold criminal governments, criminal politicians to account for their crimes. Yes, that needs to be a new normal. That really should have been normal, but it isn't. Actually, at the moment, it's normal to be governed by criminals who are telling us a pack of lies, to have a media that is just a corporate propaganda machine. That's what it has become. A whore, basically. They're all whores. All the politicians. Taking the money, closing the mouths, looking the other way. Half of them blackmailed because they're paedophiles and what have you. But the COVID-19 test kits, there is no COVID-19 test kit specifically. They're not testing specifically for COVID-19. They can't test specifically for COVID-19 because they've never isolated the COVID-19 virus. What they can tell people is that you have a coronavirus, you've tested positive for coronavirus. It could be that you might have any variety of coronavirus type influenzas or the common cold. But they're not going to tell you exactly. You go home, you quarantine just in case you've got this mysterious COVID-19, which is actually SARS. It's SARS that's been out. It's been around since 2002. Or was it 1999 when it first appeared? It's SARS. And every so often you'll have peaks in any particular variety of flu will suddenly peak. And it looks like this one's been leaked out of some lab. Whether it has or not, okay, it is not as deadly as they've made out. It is no more of a danger than any other flu. In fact, it's less of a danger than regular flu to children and younger people under the age of 60. Because regular flu can kill children. Okay? Regular flu can kill anybody of any age through the complications that arise out of it. But it seems COVID-19 more targets people who are elderly with underlying health conditions. So, you know, they're lying to us. We are being lied to. And that is why on this site, when they've altered the PCR kit to mean COVID-19, it's changed even up to the year 17 because it's the same blooming kit that they were using. The same testing kit. Nobody has a sample of the virus. That's a fact. They have not isolated this virus. Nobody's got... How can they test and tell people you've got COVID-19 if they haven't got the virus? If they can't check, oh, that's the virus. Yes, they have this virus. No, that's not what they're doing. They're checking for RNA strands. Like I say, you can read it all for yourself. I'm not going to go through it all here, but it explains to you exactly how this test works. They are not testing. They're telling all these people, they're saying, oh, you've got COVID-19, you need to quarantine. And people say, well, I feel perfectly fine. They've probably got flu that the body is fighting off successfully, as a lot of healthy people do. Healthy people can come into contact with all kinds of pathogens all of the time, and the body will fight it off. It will be at a very low viral load. And that means that, no, they're not going to be transmitting it to other people. People can walk around with viruses, like, for example, chickenpox. They're not going to actually infect anybody until they're covered in chickenpox. You know, viruses have a specific period of when they are most infectious, when people can actually transmit the virus. We know very well that sneezing and coughing are part of what transmits flu, okay? Somebody with no symptoms is not going to give you flu by breathing next to you in a supermarket. It just is not going to happen. And even if it could, the likelihood, most people, like I say, their body's just going to fight it off. That's why there's so many people who are asymptomatic. And they're saying, oh, the cases are rising. The cases, oh, so many cases. We're going to have to close this down. We're going to have another lockdown because the cases are rising, but the deaths are falling. So how does that work out? How does it work out? Because all these deaths over the winter period are what happens in Britain every year. And when you close the hospitals down, what do you expect? When you shut the health service down, because that's what they've done and there's no getting away from it. And I don't care, you know, people saying, oh, well, you know, we've got to save the NHS. It's like, no, the NHS is there to look after us when we're sick, not us being told, no, you're going to have to be under house arrest and wear a mask and do this and do that. To protect the NHS, that is bloody ridiculous. So they're lying to us. And that's why I have not received a reply from my Freedom of Information request to the NHS. Because they're not testing for COVID-19, they're testing for coronavirus. Because Boris Johnson's government have written it in their bill and sent it to the hospitals that coronavirus now means COVID-19. And that's the game they're playing. Oh, well, you know, if they've got coronavirus, we're just going to have to assume they've got COVID-19 because we haven't got a specific test for COVID-19. They have not. And that's why when they've altered the PCR test to say COVID-19 test kits, because they've renamed them, they've rebranded an old test that will show that they can use to test for influenza viruses, coronaviruses. So they've just rebanded it, COVID-19, and sent that everywhere. And then in every country, oh, the numbers are going up, people, more and more cases of COVID-19, when actually it's more and more cases of coronavirus. Or people carrying, and the vast majority of them showing no symptoms. Or very mild or minor symptoms. So this is the smoking gun, okay? It really is. You know, follow the money as usual. The World Bank, follow the money, and that is what is happening. So there you go. You know, they've changed the PCR test instead of calling it PCR whatever as it is titled here. Okay. Polymerase chain reaction based test, right? So they've changed the name of that on the website, haven't they, to COVID-19, and then the computer then has read, oh right, so now that's it, that test now reads COVID-19, and that's why you can go back to 2017 and see it says COVID-19 now, instead of the PCMR reactor whatever test kits. Because it's the same test. It's the same test. That is the test they are using. That is full on, I think, as close as you're going to get. That's enough now to arrest everything that's happening. That is enough to demand a public inquiry into this whole COVID thing. And that is enough to demand compensation to the people who've been damaged, whose lives have been damaged, people who've been denied health treatment, people who've lost businesses and jobs, people who've lost loved ones and not been able to visit them. On the strength of what? On the fact that they've got influenza. They've tested positive for influenza, but no, the whole world is being told, no, they had COVID-19, when actually they're not even testing specifically for COVID-19. That is fraud on a grand scale. And people need to be angry about it because of the levels of fear and what they've been doing to our children. And they're lying to us. They are lying to us. Because these tests, the most that they can show is that people have a coronavirus. Okay? If they've got SARS, their flu will develop into SARS, which, like I say, that's been around so long. It can no longer be described as a pandemic any more than it was a pandemic when it was first diagnosed. But they have damaged people's immunity, and they're continuing to damage people's immunity with the fear and the masks and the track and tracing and the threat of forced vaccinations. With no liability for the manufacturers. They're talking about medical rape, and a lot of people are very worried about it. Lowers the immunity. Lowers the immunity, makes people more susceptible to viruses, especially influenza viruses. I know for a fact that if I've been really depressed, something really terrible has happened in my life, I have at times come down with really bad flu. This is so outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. And like I say, this is your smoking gun. That's the smoking gun. Okay? It's like finding the gun and the bullet, right? Yeah, the bullet matches the gun. Because the bullet is what? The COVID-19 test kit was the same test kits that they were using all around the world to diagnose various viral infections. In 2017, it's the same one. And if they've never isolated the virus, which the CDC itself in America admits, as again the last American vagabond has shown, I will dig you that show out and try and find the link specifically for that, but they have never isolated the virus. So, what? They're lying. The whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. They've been testing for influenza and colds. And yeah, some among those may be people with SARS. That's the original SARS-CoV. Not SARS-CoV-19, just SARS-CoV, which is bad. It can kill people. And actually people who've had the influenza jabs, the regular influenza jabs, are going to be more susceptible to it. But they cannot tell you exactly that, oh, this was COVID-19. So therefore we have been dealing with mass pandemic fraud. And I think every nation needs the people. It's the people now. You need to stand up, and we need to bring a class action and arrest this whole cabal. With the powers that they've tried to give themselves now, arresting people, fining people, you know, throw one guy in Liverpool getting dragged off a train because he's not wearing a mask, assaulted by police, stripped half naked in front of a train full of passengers because he wasn't wearing a mask. What? And their tests aren't, they can't even test for COVID-19. They have no test for COVID-19. Lying to us. Leading people along on a myth. They have less evidence to say somebody has COVID-19 than we have evidence to say this is mass fraud and a power grab. And denying people healthcare. So, anyway, I'm going to leave you the links. Yes, I feel passionate about this. I am deeply, deeply disturbed. Very, very disturbed about what's happening. And a lot of people like myself have been suspicious about what's been going on in this world, especially the last few years. It's ramped up. And then suddenly this, and suddenly Bill Gates there talking about injecting everybody on the planet with an experimental vaccine, and it's just, it's sorry, boys, you've gone way too far. You've took enough rope to hang yourselves with, okay? Well, they're very fortunate that the people like myself don't actually support the death penalty, but they do need arresting, and that there needs to be charges and there needs to be trials.